dear friends, today we celebrate the feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Mary was the ark sanctified by God, filled with the grace, temple fit for the divine and the immaculate Mother of God. The ever Virgin Mary, having completed the course of her earthly life, was assumed body and soul into the heavenly glory. The Feast of Assumption shows Mary sharing in God's life as an integral person. The whole of her being was filled with God's presence. Like Mary, each one of us are called to share God's life. Although we cannot understand how this will take place, in celebrating the Feast of Mary's Assumption, at least we can assert that we too will share in God's glory fully with every particle of our being. Having granted this privilege to our human race, God will not deny it to us who follow her, especially if in imitation of her we try to be as generously open to God as we possibly can. Here, my dear friends, I am going to speak on the 4 reasons which prove the Assumption of Mary. First of all, I would like to say that this is truly a biblical concept. Assumption into heaven happened to both Enoch and Elijah in the Old Testament. Instead of their body dying, their physical body and soul was taken up into heaven by God. Genesis chapter 5 verse 24 says, Enoch walked with God when he was no more, because God took him. And then in 2 Kings chapter 2 verse 11, Elijah is walking with his intern Elisha. As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horse of fire separated 2 of them, and Elijah ascended into a whirlwind into heaven. This I said to emphasize that the Assumption into heaven is not uniquely Mary's concept. It's not desire, it's not against precedent. It happened twice in the Old Testament. Enoch and Elijah and Mary being assumed into heaven is not by their strength but by the power of God. And it's a beautiful theology that Mary experienced the future resurrection. The second reason in the Assumption of Mary is that there are no relics or burial place for Mary. The most compelling argument for Mary's body being assumed into heaven is the complete lack of Mary's body parts. This sounds bizarre, but if we study early Christians, they were obsessed with dead Christians' body parts. They would carry them around and do various rituals for the dead person. This is one of the most integral part of the early church, and the complete absence of talk of possessing Mary's body parts or the place where she was buried. This is unheard of in the early Christian history. The burial places are so important for them. Saints Peter and Paul were buried in Rome. Saints John, Timothy and Mary Magdalene were buried in Ephesus. Luke was buried in Greece. Saint Mark was buried in Alexandria. Even the graves of the Old Testament heroes are mentioned in the Bible. The graves of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob are at Hebron. Rachel is buried at Bethel. Acts 2:29 says that the grave of David is in Jerusalem. So why absolutely no early Christians speak about the grave where the Virgin Mary was buried? Because there is no such a thing. Everyone knows that Mary was body and soul taken into heaven. The third reason for the Assumption is that Mary's part as the new Eve. The verse in Revelation referring to Mary as the mother of all Christians. So just like how Eve was the mother of all humanity, so also Mary is portrayed as the new Eve. This is very basic belief of early Christianity. One of the easiest ways to prove is 3 of the earliest Christian writers like Justin Martyr, Irenaeus and Tertullian All refer to Mary as the new Eve. Irenaeus, the father of Mariology, says, in accordance with this design, Mary the Virgin is found obedient, saying, behold the handmaid of the Lord, be done in me according to your word. But the Eve was disobedient, for she did not obey. Having become disobedient, Eve was made the cause of death, whereas Mary the new Eve, through her obedience, became the cause of salvation. The fourth reason is that the early Christians believed in the Assumption of Mary. We have in the history of the church documents from the 4th century onwards which prove the Assumption. In AD 300, we have a letter from Mary to the Bishop of Sardis to the church at Laodicea. Therefore, it might come to pass by the power of your grace, it has appeared right to us, your servants, that as you having overcome death, do reign in glory, so you should raise up the body of your mother and take her with you, rejoice into heaven. This is what the bishop says in AD 300. These manuscripts are clear signs that the early Christians believed in the Assumption of Mary. These are the 4 proofs for Mary's body and soul being physically taken up into heaven at the end of her life. So my dear friends, let's acknowledge our complete dependence on God like Mother Mary, for she has given us the ladder to heaven. Let's hold on the hands of Mother Mary, for she will reach us to Jesus who is in heaven. God bless you all.